Hello everyone, welcome back to In My Shed. I'm BC and here we are at another episode of the frames. Taken off one side of the bracket off here, and the outside of the plate is just a little bit big for the frames where I want it to be. So I'm going to take about 25 thou off this edge, and that means that the angle bracket will be able to adjust and float to suit the frames a little bit and make sure that this isn't interfering. And that may allow me to bring the frames a little bit closer in at that particular section. We're on the little baby Kearns horizontal borer. I did a bit of a video on it a while ago. I've adjusted the head to where I think that it should be running. Now we clamp the height position up with the spanner on these two bolts. And that's one of the disappointments of the Kearns. It only latches onto a piece of sheet metal either side. I don't know how good that is, but it's only a light horizontal borer, so I can't say too much. I've measured across here with my digital verniers and I average what the frames run out at, and I think 25 thou will be good enough. The tooling I'm using is the way I have adapted the mill. You've got the snout bar holder, and I'll be locking up the two plates once I get it the right side. Inside here is a Morse taper 3 to turret lathe 1.5 inch socket. I ground a flat on that for this bolt to clamp onto, and I've got an ER32 3 Morse taper milling chuck in there, and in the back of the socket there's a bit of 1/2 inch threaded rod and the nut to draw that in. So it makes it quite an adaptable unit. 3 Morse taper to drill chuck, 3 Morse taper to Morse taper drills, 3 Morse taper to milling chuck. So I can hold a variety of tools, and I've even used this to hold a tungsten carbide tip boring bar and used the facing head for internal boring work, although I think I've got that a little bit more rigid at the moment. So I'll get the electric set up and bring you back when I've got it running and when I'm taking a cut. All for now. For those of you who came in late, this is the 1960s version of a DRO. It's called an Optometric system. And what we're looking there at is a screen with a reflection through a mirror or a prism and a light shining on a vernier scale. And as I move the head, you can see the scale moving against a pointer. Now this scale has been displaced a little bit, but normally down in this bottom corner, as you can see on the transfer scale on the table, there is a little vernier scale that's secondary. And I wondered why they're always in such big increments in there, but you use the little vernier scale to read it off a little bit better. And if it's in the scale that I think it is, you should be able to get within about 1/2 thou with that. So it's off dead centre on the table at the moment, where I think 1 inch above centre height on the table. So using that, if you know what you're doing, is fairly accurate. Luckily I don't have to do that sort of pitching at the moment. I'll just tighten up the head again. I relaxed the clamping plates to show you the screen moving. Right, I'll get the camera reset and we can start the Arbora up. Here we are with the Arbora. If you've seen it running in some earlier videos, you'll know that it is much brighter now than what it was before. I am a bit disappointed in the setup. Somewhere along the shaft I've got a run out. It starts at about 1.5 thou there and finishes up at about 4 thou at the chuck. And I just clocked it up and I thought I had it knocked up right, but it just doesn't want to behave. But I've only got this one little job to do, and it's only taking a few thou off. So I'm just going to come in 1.5, 2 thou at a time, pass it across the plate and hope the hell that it stays in one piece. Got a dial indicator on the back of the plate just in case things move on me. But I think I'll be right as long as I go steady again. I did a bit of work on the snout bar holder when I repaired the bearings. The whole snout bar holder is fabricated, not the original cast item, and it wasn't machined up very true, so I put a shaft in the snout bar holder and held that in the lathe chuck and then faced the back plate of the snout bar holder off, and I thought I'd done a pretty smart job. But the machine also suffers from a bit of lack of use, and the auto feed for the head's not working again, so I've got to spray a bit of catfish lube in there and try and get it to work properly. And it seems to be just sneaking down a half off quite nicely. Okay, back we go again. And I'll turn the old girl off and do a measure up to see where we're at. This is another problem with old machines, there is no rapid braking. So you definitely do not want to get caught up in there. .11. Got another fourth hour to come off. I think I'll sneak back in tomorrow. I've got some housework to get home to. So all for now, please like and subscribe and come back on Monday and do a bit more. Well, here we are back on the defective frames, and I've got to admit it's frames 1 and the old bearded ghost 0. The newly machined part squared up beautiful with the squares, put it in the frame, and I could pull the side of the frame over, but it is still not square. So I'm standing back and scratching my head a little bit. I have got a Boilermaker special spanner up on the front there, great big adjustable, and I've loosened off all of the front buffer beam mounts and taken the bolts out of the left hand side, which is the one giving me grief. And I can pull it back to square quite easy. The whole frame lines up lovely, but all of the bolt holes in the buffer beam are out by about an eighth of a hole. And I really scratched my head with that because both buffer beams were, I think, accurately marked out. They were clamped together and drilled as a pair. So I really can't see what the hell I've done wrong. And rather than hop in boots first, drill out the holes and make all the necessary adjustments, and that will be quite capable of doing. Even though I've opened up the holes, I can always MIG weld the bracket to the buffer beam in a few spots to give it more strength. I don't want to hop in too quick just in case I've missed something. Like, I just don't do work this bloody bad. I found a few cumulative errors along the way, but it's not all coming together the way I'd like. So rather than huff and puff and blow some smoke, I'll go over and do a job on the horizontal borer. While we were milling, I found that the torrent adapter inside the snout bar adapter is not running out very true, and that made probably about 1/8 hour run out at the cutter, and I'm not happy with that. It was all running very, very good before I overhauled the gearbox, so somewhere along the way I haven't set it up right, and that'll be the job after lunch. Okay, bye for now. Like and subscribe, and the frames have beaten me for this weekend. Well, good day there, guys. Welcome to another episode of Machining Disasters and Things That Don't Work. Hasn't been a real good weekend for me, or long weekend for me, but I was a bit concerned when machining the spreader for the frames that I found a bit of run out on the chuck. And when I rebuilt the borer, I had that down to about 1/100th of a millimetre, and now it's showing 0.15 millimetre or 1/6 thou, and that's just not on. Not good. I finished that job by taking very, very light cuts, but we'll do a little bit of troubleshooting, find out if it's in the snout bar adapter in the sleeve or a bit of poo in there. Now, I did mount a bar in the snap bar holder, held the bar in the chuck and machined the back surface. And it was out a little bit, it had walked over time and probably a bit of hard usage. Got it nice and flat. And then I found out that these nuts were bottoming out and preventing the plate going back down onto the surface. And I did take a little bit off the T-nuts, but maybe it wasn't enough. So we'll do a bit of investigation. I'll put a feeler gauge down inside the back of that when I can find one. But first we'll see just how bad the run out is. So there we are on the body of the collet chuck. And come out a little bit further. There, right. And there, look at that, smaller than a fairy's fart. So let's scratch the head a little bit. I'll go in a little bit closer. Wrong way, you old goat. Now that's got me really scratching my head. I can understand this adapter having some run out. It's just in a plain hole, flat on the shank here, and a side bolt screw, and that's out by almost as much as the front. But if that's out, how can this have less than half of the run out? Okay, we'll take it apart bit by bit and see what we can find inside. Okay, it's all held together by a through bolt through the turret adapter, pulling the chuck in. So I might set up and try and see if I can see if there's any run out in that socket. Back to basics. Be back soon. Okay, here we are inside the mouth of the snout bar holder, and this looks pretty crook, especially as I haven't crashed it yet, or recently. Okay. It's quite a different setup. There's T-headed bolts that locate it, and there's some blocks in here that locate it centrally in the guides. And that's for this side only. So I'll get some feeler gauges, come back, and we'll have a bit of a look in there. Well, I think I might have just hit the nail on the head. I don't know whether you can see good enough there, but the feeler gauge is going in under the edge of the snout bore mount plate. So I would say the little guide strips in there just weren't filed down far enough to get it to fit good. So at least it looks like an easy fit. I'll unbolt that, show you the mechanics, and we can have a bit of a try. Bye for now. Back again. The only flat place in the shed that hasn't got tools and equipment all over it is the borer table, so he says. And I've incorporated a bit of shadow-proof lighting so we can see it a bit better. This is the milling chuck I use. Just a 3mm taper from when I had a cheaper nasty mill. Draw bolt in the back with a screwdriver slot so I can pull it up. And I just use a brass waddy on the back of that, which is evident, to knock it back out again. I got these off eBay over in the States. They're turret lay sockets with Morse taper inside, and I've got a longer one that's about 9 inches long, and I built up an extension for the radial arm drill using rotor broach cutters and big taps, it seems to work quite well. But I didn't think it could be in there because that's robust, and this poor old girl hasn't got enough horsepower to knock that to pieces. So yep, that's not to blame. This is a snout bar holder that I keep talking about. It's just a reasonable 1.5 inch hole in there. Now this is the face that I turned off. I had a circular tool in there, which was going to be the boring tool extender. I just faced it off in a lathe that was about 10 or 12 thou concave, so I think that's just from manufacture. And these are the little guides that slide inside the grooves in the front of the boring head. And when I faced a few thou off there, they were protruding, or this flange was protruding down a couple of thou too much and jamming up and stopping the facing head from working properly and making it very difficult to clock that up true. So I just used the file to take a few thou off that edge there, and obviously I just didn't quite take enough. If you can fit a 3 thou feeler gauge through there, that means the whole tool mounting is eccentric, and that's why we can come down to almost nothing there, 3 times what we're getting in there at the front. So it all makes sense. This just wasn't coming down flat enough. It's a pity I haven't got the mill table clear. I'd like to run an end mill over that and do it up neat, but as it doesn't have to fit good, it just slides in the groove and stops the whole lot rotating on the front of the plate and takes a lot of the stress off the T-bolts. I'll just take a bit more out with the file and then put a feeler gauge in when I get it set up, make sure it sits down flat. Luckily I found an easy fix. I was a little bit worried about that much run out, but if you can fix it easy, the problem's not that big. Okay, bye for now. I hope that's a bit of an explanation that helped you out.